Hi, everyone. Welcome to Courageous Parenting Summit, transforming challenges into opportunities. And we are here committed to empowering parents and children by building connection with love. I'm Edith Wolek. I'm a transformational leadership coach, Amazon best-selling book author, and mother of 3 amazing, beautiful children. Welcome, Dr. Tinita, to our Courageous Parenting Summit.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Filza Jabin, mother of 3 beautiful children, transformational teens, and parent leadership coach. Welcome, Dr. Tinita.
Thank you.
Let me introduce you all to Dr. Tinita. Dr. Tinita is a pediatric speech language pathologist whose expertise lies in working with neurodivergent and culturally and linguistically diverse students. Dr. Kearney, Tinita Kearney, is a public speaker, private practice owner, and has most recently served the vice chair of Maryland Board of Audiologists. Wow. Hearing aid dispensers, speech language pathologist, and music therapist. Dr. Tinita has also served as an Autism Speaks volunteer advocacy ambassador for the state of Maryland. And today she is going to talk about practical ways to improve your child's speech and language skills. I'm so glad to have you here with us, Dr. Tinita. Can you tell us about your story, about your journey in this field of speech and language pathology?
Sure. So I actually did not really have an awareness or knowledge that this was an actual field when I first went to college. I was a journalism major of all things, and during one of my freshman orientation classes, the department chair for communication sciences and disorders came to speak to the group and just shared about this field. And I was just like, that sounds amazing. And I switched majors that day. And it's so funny because it reminded me of work I had done as a high school student, again, not knowing this field existed, working in a school that was designed for autistic children. And I was just working with them, but didn't know I could do that as like a real profession. So it was wonderful to discover it. And I have been in love with the field ever since.
Wonderful, wonderful, amazing to hear that. So, can you tell us what are the challenges do children with autism tend to have that make communication difficult for them?
Sure, well, because as we all know, it's such a wide spectrum. This answer is different for many families, but I find that it can become particularly challenging for parents to kind of communicate with their children. And of course, children should communicate with everyone in their family and their loved ones when they have limited verbal language, right? Or no real system of communication. And so those kiddos are the ones who have the particular challenges because just naturally as human beings, we tend to want to verbally communicate, right? And so if we have difficulties in that area, it just presents itself as a challenge. But there are so many ways to overcome that. And I'm excited to chat more with you about those specific ways as we kind of go further in the interview. But for sure, the challenge of communicating and then using communication and to connect with others socially is another just major hurdle that a lot of autistic students and people do face. Again, though, an area where they can certainly find help to improve those skills that we'll talk about some more today.
Yeah, sure. Edith, you're muted. If you're asking question.
Thank you so much. And this was amazing insight. And I wanted to ask you a question. How can we help our autistic children communicate and strengthen that communication through the work that you do or at home?
Sure. So at home, starting at home, the first thing I always encourage my parents to do is to just change their mindset. It can be very easy, again, when you're not able to traditionally communicate verbally with someone, to assume that they're not understanding what it is you're trying to communicate. So if some autistic kiddos tend to not look at a person, or they're just kind of focused, hyper focused on what they're interested in, we tend to assume they're not absorbing anything that's going on around them. And that I have learned many times over is most times, many times just incorrect, right? It's very hard to understand what a person actually does understand or what they're soaking in unless they tell you. But I have completely known and come to know rather that we should tend to assume that everything is being understood until we're proven wrong. So until a student shows me or a child shows me they truly don't understand, my assumption is you do understand. I work from that standpoint. So that's what I always encourage my parents to do. Just shift your mindset before you even start to try to communicate. And once you have that mindset, you have a great foundation to build healthy communication with your child. The second thing is to really be a good model of what you want your child to sound like themselves. So if they are verbal, you are providing really good models of what language sounds like. So again, it's a wide spectrum. So I'll give just random examples. So for children who repeat a lot of what they hear, you might hear things such as scripts from TV shows or books being used all throughout the day. And so, for example, one script might be, let's go right away, right? They're just saying, let's go right away, let's go right away. You're looking as a parent for what that child is really trying to communicate. They're taking that script, and we're not just saying, it means nothing. It may very well mean nothing, but as a parent, you're looking for the connection. Is my child trying to tell me something with this script? So you're testing things out. Maybe the child is trying to ask to go outside because the character in that TV show saying, let's go right away, is on his way outside, right? So you take the child outside. Do they want to go outside? Great, you've unlocked the meaning of that script, and now you can give a model of better language. So you shape, let's go right away to, let's go outside or let's go play, right? So you now say that, and your child can learn language that way as well. So being a good model of what you want your child to say and how you want them to sound is also a great example. And the last example is just to play with that child. You have to play, you have to engage in things that are going to really attract their attention, and then you pair language with that. We're not really asking a whole bunch of questions unless that child has enough language and they're verbal enough to be able to consistently go back and forth with you and answer. If not, though, you're not really asking a bunch of questions. You're just commenting on what's happening. If you're playing with cars, you're saying, look, two cars, red car, blue car, going so fast, right? Talking about what you're doing. And if you want to involve your child directly with language, you have them fill in. I have a red car. I have a, and then you pause and see if they fill in. If they don't, you fill it in for them. You're just playing and giving them models of language. So, three easy tips that parents can do to boost language and communication skills.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, as you're saying about these beautiful, amazing tips, I would like to ask you, is echolalia
Mhm.
dangerous? If some child is like repeating what is said to them, is
Mhm.
it dangerous? Should parents take it as an alarm to run to a speech and language pathologist, or what should they do to stop immediately to echolalia, or should they stop, or should they just need to let it go? I want you to
That's a
talk about it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, just so everyone's on the same page, echolalia is, like I mentioned, just repeating either immediately what they have heard or a delayed repetition, right? So just repeating what they've heard. It's not their own unique language. They've heard this before, now they're using it. Is it dangerous? I would not say it's dangerous. Is it cause for going to a speech pathologist? I see no harm at all in seeking out help for any reason, right? If my kids are sick, I have no problem going to a doctor just to get some answers to questions. There's no harm in that. But in regards to that third part you mentioned, should we be trying to stop it? Absolutely not. If a child is demonstrating echolalia, they are most often what we call a Gestalt language processor or language learner. So we learn language two different ways. Not one way is better than the other. They're just different. So children who are mostly what we call, I guess, typically developing or neurotypical progress kind of usually from the typical way is learning language in smaller units, so like words, and we then combine words to make phrases, then combine those phrases to make sentences. And Gestalt language processors, which are a lot of times our autistic kiddos, do not learn language that same way. They learn in chunks. So they may take that echolalic speech, that script, and that's what they're trying to communicate. That sentence communicates one idea, and they use that to communicate several ideas as opposed to breaking it down. So, for example, let's go right away could mean let's go out play. It could mean let's go to bed. It could mean let's go eat dinner, right? And we're teaching them to use that script to break it down so they can understand words and phrases and then build their language back up to be complex. But the first step is echolalia, right? If they're not doing that, they're not showing their progressing. So we're excited to hear the echolalia because that's the first step in learning how to be a better communicator, creating more novel, new, meaningful speech. And so a speech pathologist certainly can work with families to help shape that echolalic speech into different kinds of speech. So, for example, we go from let's go right away to let's go play, let's go eat. Then you shape that as they get that to I want to eat or I'm hungry. But again, that first building block is the echoing. So that's a sign to be excited, not to stop or cease or try to cut it out in any way, shape, or form. So hopefully that answers that question.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for answering my question. And I'm sure this is a great tip for all the parents who are listening because I have seen parents getting scared. My child
Mhm.
is repeating, is on delayed echolalia. My child is repeating every question I'm asking. So thank you, Dr. Sinita, for sharing this with us. So can you tell me one more thing about like how can I, as a parent, make child respond to their name. Like this is a basic thing. I want my child to listen to their name, like respond to their name immediately. That
Mm.
I know that's coming from a desperate point of view, but I'm sure that this is the question for many parents. So can you give us a few tips around that?
That is an interesting one. Really, that is less speech language communication, more kind of behavioral modification type of thing. But I certainly have worked with families who had that same exact concern. I have one kiddo I can think of right now, actually. And one way we're working on building up that skill is to kind of break it down, right? So, does the child respond to any unexpected loud noise? So, if there's a clapping going on right behind the child's ear, will they turn to attend to it, right? And if so, we're kind of reinforcing that's well, building off of that skill. So we know the child can hear, okay, well, now we can call the child's name, and every time they look or turn or attend, it's a praise party, right? Great job looking when I called your name. I love it. Just reinforce it. So again, it's not really necessarily a speech communication issue, more of a how do we teach this behavior and then really reinforce the behavior because children are going to repeat what is reinforcing to them, right? So it might be for some families, I've seen them take like goldfish, and when they call the child's name, if they look up or look away, it's like a goldfish. Good job looking when I called your name. And they're trying to pair it that way. So many ways to attack that. 'Cause I certainly can understand that concern concern for sure. But again, I think it's really more closely tied to how you're reinforcing that behavior as opposed to a speechy way of teaching a child to do that, if that makes sense.
Wanted to ask you a question about, it's not coming from experience, but I know that there are parents that have neurodivergent children and disabled children
Mhm.
who are nonverbal. So how can you teach communication that to those, or support those parents with communicating with their children?
Certainly. So, what a phrase I'm going to use is called total communication approach. And that simply means we are giving and accepting any form of communication. So, we're giving the child an opportunity to use various forms of language and communication, rather, to talk to us and engage with us. So, that could mean we have pictures that the child is able to use to both process and understand language and to show us what they understand. We could be using, as well as pictures, a communication board, which has what we call core vocabulary on it. So those really important, most frequently occurring words in a given language. It's put all together on a board, in little small squares, and the child can use that to communicate their ideas and thoughts. Some students certainly have a more high technology or high tech communication device that they can use. And side note, there is no prerequisite for using high-tech communication devices, really, except that a child shows an interest in communicating, as well as just many other ways, gestures and sign language, eye gaze. So as a speech pathologist in my therapy sessions, I'm looking at the child and looking for any way that they're communicating what they want from me. So if a child, for example, is reaching for something, they're communicating they want something. So I then use that as an opportunity to model. I often use that core board I mentioned. So I wish I had an example right here for you guys to show, but I don't right now. But it's for the one that I use, it's 50 icons of, again, those just highly frequently occurring, high frequency words in English for me and my students. And so I might say, oh, want. I show the child the board, point to want, and then give the car, right? Or whatever they're reaching for. And then I kind of find a way to distract them, take that thing away, see if they want it back as they reach for. Again, I'm modeling, pointing, want. And that child, I will help them look. If they're looking at it, I acknowledge that. Good job looking at want. You want this. Here you go. If they touch the picture want, that counts. Good job touching want. You want the car. Here you go. If they say out their mouth want, all that counts, right? Whatever they're doing to communicate, that gets rewarded and acknowledged specifically. I will never simply say good job. I say good job touching want. Good job saying want. Good job looking at want, whatever they're doing. Good job signing want, right? So all of those are ways that parents can help children who are just nonverbal to communicate. I think pairing with whatever your schools are doing and also your speech pathologist, getting on the same board across the board is a really excellent way to do that. And here in America, we have what's called an assistive technology consultants or specialists for our school systems. And parents, at least in America, can certainly ask about having their students kind of evaluated, right? To see what best tool works for their child. And a speech pathologist also can assist you with figuring that out as well. But I would suggest looking for a speech pathologist who does specialize in assistive technology, because they'll be experts and well-versed in all the ranges of communication devices and tools that a student can use, since we don't all specialize in the same exact area.
Wow, amazing tips you're giving. And when it's an alarm, when can take it as an alarm when our children are not speaking? Like when should
Mhm.
we run for the therapy or to the doctors?
I say you run whenever you feel concerned. I certainly could refer you to developmental charts and say by such and such months old, you should be concerned and go. But I have learned as a mother of two kiddos, I have a pretty good sense of when I feel I'm not so sure about that. That's the point that I look for help. So I take my child right to that doctor, to that physician, right? The family physician, primary care physician, and ask the question at that point. I don't wait till I Google something. I go right then. When I feel that concern, I encourage families to do the same exact thing. If you're just not sure, and you want to feel confident, take your child to your primary care physician. Certainly, there are certain milestones. You can go to a site, asha.org, asha.org, and find by month and by year what communication skills your child should be showing, when they should be babbling, for example, and following directions. But because, especially with autism, the earlier, the better. I say you have a concern at that point. That's when you go to your primary care physician. And if you don't feel confident in the response you get from that person, you go right to your speech pathologist or go at the same exact time. So certainly looking at resources like what Asher.org has is a great start to help you get a better handle of what might be normal, what might not be normal for your child by age. It's a great place to start. But always your gut instinct is what I go with and tell parents also.
Okay, so what are the qualities we as a parent must see in, like before choosing our speech language pathologist for our children?
Yeah, so this is a great question because every SLP or speech language pathologist is not created equal, right? We all, I think, have a great love for kiddos, but there are just some things you want to have in place in your SLP to make sure it's a great fit. So you're wanting to have a speech pathologist who, if you do have a child who qualifies for therapy, has a way for you to be a part of those sessions, especially for younger children. It is very important for you as the parent or the caregiver to be able to see directly what your speech pathologist is doing with your child so you can copy that every day in the home because the speech pathologist will only see your child for what, 30 minutes, maybe two times a week, but that child lives with you every day. So you want to have a speech pathologist who is 100% okay and encourages you to be a part of therapy sessions, at the very least to directly observe what is happening if the child is older and just more easily distracted by your presence. You also want an SLP who is going to have a really clear understanding of the specific speech disorder or language disorder that you're coming to them for, right? So you want to ask them how many years have you worked with students like this and what kind of training have you had? That's very important because again, we all specialize in different areas. You also want to be sure that they are prepared to provide you on a regular basis with assignments and things that you can do, strategies to implement and homework, if you will, to do with your child throughout the week for practice. That has to be a part of that program to make sure what's being transferred or what's being learned rather in that speech office can transfer across settings to the home and then eventually to school as well. So those are some things that I think are super important for parents to look for when they're trying to find who the best match is for their kiddo in a speech pathologist. And also make sure that person is licensed and certified. You can also go to asha.org to check and see if a provider is certified. They don't have to have ASHA certification. Let me be very clear. If you're in America, they don't have to have ASHA certification, but you do want to check that in your state. Every single state does have an oversight board that you can go to. You can just type in Google, SLP or SLP license verification, right? You can just type that in Google for whatever state you're in if you're in the US, and there will pop up if your SLP is in fact licensed to practice. That's very important.
Mm, thank you. And in other countries, there are many different resources and people can find out, as long as they know that they get to be looking for some license.
Yes.
So what how can how can parents take the techniques and methods of communication from the therapy and bring it home and utilize it at home?
Yeah, so great question. That kind of ties into my last response too, actually, right? The best way is to observe that therapy session directly. So whatever is happening in that speech and language session, whatever techniques are being used there, you can quickly pick up on and copy at home if you are able to be involved. So definitely just directly observing or taking part in a therapy session is just the best way for you to learn how to apply what your child is learning in therapy right at home and carry it over into that home environment.
Thank you.
Okay.
And are the parents always involved in therapy? Are they always present?
So there are some therapists, some speech pathologists who prefer parents not be. And that's who I say, red flag, find someone else. There are certainly clinicians who say, no, parents stay in the lobby. And what I do with the child, we'll just work on together. Barring extreme situations, there are certainly cases where there are some children who are just way too distracted with a parent in that room, but a parent should always be able to directly observe. Some SLPs, for example, have like two-way mirrors. So the child can't see the parent and not be distracted, but the parent can still see everything going on in that therapy session. And that's what you want. If that's not what's being offered, you really want to push and advocate for that or find someone who can do that for you.
Thank you. Be
Okay.
safe
Mhm.
always.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
So is autism the only reason for speech delay, or children can have different diagnoses like ADHD or any other developmental delays? That can also be the reason for speech
No.
and language delay in our children. Can you put light
Absolutely.
on
There
that?
are many reasons. For sure. For sure. There could be, I mean, the list, is as long as my arm, right? It could be that the child has had frequent hearing or rather ear infections when they were an infant. And then therefore all that time, if we weren't diagnosing it early or didn't pick up on it early enough, they were not able to hear and process language as they should have been able to. So there's a delay there. There could be that there just is like a specific learning impairment or disorder, specific learning disorder, where it makes it hard for them to learn and process language. There could be just a multitude of reasons for sure that could impact how well or how soon a child starts to develop language. But no matter what the reason, there is certainly always room to improve, always room. It's never too late to grow language and communication skills.
So
most
one question related to that, like
Yes.
how do you handle ADHD children? Because many parents say that my child is not sitting in one place to give them speech and language therapy, so they need
Mhm.
to stay calm. So how do you deal with those children?
Yeah, that's a lot of autistic kiddos do have that as like a concomitant disorder, ADHD for sure. I Again, it kind of is more of a behavioral question, not so much speech question. A child certainly has to be able and available for learning, for any learning to be valuable. So I just try to keep the therapy session with my kiddos who have ADHD just fast-paced and very highly interesting, right? Everything in speech therapy should always be as child-centered as possible. So I'm often following my child's lead. So I give a bunch of preferred options. And then as they work with that and enjoy it, I use their attention in that activity to shape language because you can use any scenario to build language, right? So if I had a plan to read a book and do a worksheet, but they're not feeling it and they're super interested in my toy car, well, guess what? I now pivot to this toy car and work on their goals with this toy car, right? So I shift, and as their attention shifts, I try to also shift. I have a routine as well. So every speech session follows the same order, where they can expect what's happening next. They know what's happening. I also build in, again, being child-centered. They have a lot of choice, right? So you get to choose what we do first, what we do second, what we do second and third, rather. What we do first is always the same. How we end the session is always the same. But in the middle, you have some control. We're going to follow what you want to do. And to a great extent, that works. I do have some kiddos who simply cannot attend past even a minute. And at that point, what's there to be done? Nothing really, right? This is a conversation for the parent to have with their primary care physician regarding other ways to deal with that. And sometimes that's medication or what have you. But at a certain point, we can only do so much as clinicians. But those are some things that I do that kind of have been successful for me.
One more question. Like I'm like bombarding you with the question, but yes, I was
It's
waiting for
okay.
this. Yeah, can severe autistic children be taught if they
I'm
are
sorry, say it
nonverbal?
again. Can who?
Severely autistic children be taught, be trained in language if they are delaying or if they are completely not speaking? Can they
Mhm.
be trained in this area?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Again, the assumption should always be, no matter what the child presents with, that they have the greatest capacity to learn, and they are, in fact, learning until they prove you otherwise. I've had so many children. For example, I had one kiddo who he was not placed correctly, and he was in the general education classroom setting, and we had a meeting for him because obviously he was not a great fit. And the teacher would say, he says nothing all day. He can't even hold a crayon. He's just all over the floor. He's like holding his ears. Nothing is really kind of working. He's at this point in time able to follow some directions that are routine, but I don't know at all what he knows. I can't understand all what he knows. Well, I had to assess him. And hearing that, you would think, well, you're not going to get much, right? I never go into an assessment thinking that. I always go into my assessments wondering with excitement and expectation, what is this child going to surprise me with today? What are they going to show me they know, right? It's not if, it's what will they show me? And so I had to assess him, and he came into my office, and I again had all the things a little boy would, I think, love, all kinds of toys that move and make noises. And he came in and immediately signed what he signed, it wasn't help. I think he signed play. I think he signed play. And no one had ever seen him sign a thing ever. Okay. But immediately in this one-on-one environment, super child-led, he got to pick whatever he wanted in that moment. He showed me one thing he knew. Then by the end of that session, he started speaking. He said, go car, go car. Okay. That entire year, the teacher would have said he cannot speak at all because he had not spoken in her classroom. In this one-on-one session, he did. So, what I say this to say, you never ever know what a child knows, what's going to click. And if they never speak or never sign, that is still no indication that they are not able to learn. The assumption always should be they are able to. One student I worked with him when he was 5 years old. I started. He's now like a full-grown man. He might as well be a full-grown man at this point. But he is nonverbal. He was always nonverbal. And he was that kid who you just weren't sure a lot of times what was getting through. Had no idea. Well, as he got to his teen years, his family finally found a good communication tool for him. And he called me. We had a party for him, and his whole team came to celebrate him. He had a party, and he called us one by one, and he had me in tears with the way he thanked me for things we did when he was 5. Okay. Things that I had no idea he was aware was going on or that he would ever remember. He did, and had the clearest way to explain to me his gratitude and thanks. So I say again, never assume that a child is too far gone or that a child is not understanding. They are able, no matter how severe.
That's
fascinating.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tinita. This
You're
is
so
really
welcome.
heartwarming. I've got tears in my eyes. It's
I
just
know. I did good. I didn't cry. I usually cry with that story. I didn't cry this time though.
So you
Yeah.
have given us and our audience so much information. Can you share your free gift so people can connect with you and get support?
Sure. So right here is a copy of a children's book. It's a Lift the Flatboard book, which is super fun. I love interactive books. So kiddos can kind of read this book and lift some flaps and learn how to answer simple WH questions. So who, what, where questions using this book here as some great tips for parents inside on how to use it also. And so I will give this to I guess how we guys do like a raffle to a lucky winner or attendee, whoever, as well as a link for everyone to get access to other resources that I have on my website as well that are completely free. One is a boom card. I'm not sure if you guys had that, but it's like a computer program that I created. It's also super fun to help boost your child's language skills. I'll give that to everyone, and you guys can figure out who the one lucky winner will be of the book.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much for
You're
all the
welcome.
generosity and all the knowledge which you have spread. And I really am focusing on the strength which you made me focus on. So I want all the parents to focus on the strength which Dr.
Absolutely.
Tinita is doing with her clients, with her uh, children around her. So this is so powerful. And keep doing the work you are doing. Keep showering with your generosity in the world. Thank you for being whatever you're being here is amazing for all the children.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Tinita.
Thank
Thank
you
you
guys
so
so much. I
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye for now.